You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
Manusmriti is Sanskrit text dating back to 200 CE roughly and deemed by feminist anti-caste crusaders to be a regressive piece of writing is back in a political row. Despite the father of the Indian Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar himself burning this text in 1927 as a symbolic rejection, Manusmriti keeps coming back to the contemporary political discourse. And this time, as Tamil Nadu is gearing up for the state assembly elections of 2021, the text is in the eye of a political storm between the BJP and the Viduthalai, Chiruthaigal, Katchi or the VCK. Now the row has to do with VCK's Dalit founder and Chidambaram MP, Mr. Thol Thirumavalavan's comments on the book. A small clip of Mr. Thirumavalavan's speech from a web conference organized last month by the European Union Periyar Ambedkar Comrades Federation went viral on social media. Calling for a ban on the book, the clip shows him quoting from the book to say that it demeans women, and this is a verbatim translation of what he said. Quote, "As per Hindu Dharma, all women are created by God as prostitutes. They are prostitutes as per Hindu Dharma Manu Dharma. The status of all women is less than that of a man." End quote. And Khushbu Sundar, who switched to the BJP from Congress only 2 weeks back, jumped right in demanding an apology from him, claiming that he has insulted women and also that there is quote-unquote not a single word in the text that demeans women. While the BJP's Tamil Nadu wing has shot down the row saying that Manusmriti is a quote-unquote non-issue as India follows a constitution, why is the text still dominating the political discourse? How is Manusmriti surviving today? Is it just the text or has it been imbued in everyday actions? For this podcast, we spoke to Kavita Krishnan, part of the All India Progressive Women's Association and Politburo member of the CPI-ML, and also the author of the book Fearless Freedom, and Tamil Nadu-based Dalit poet Kutti Revathi. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shalpuri. Manusmriti, as we know, was revived around the colonial period to serve as a basis for Hindu codes or Hindu laws. But because it appears to be a text written by Brahmins for Brahmins and other upper caste men, it goes without saying that it's fraught with prejudices. Large sections of this text have been criticized for advocating for the restriction of rights and liberties of women and Dalits and for treating them as properties. And for that very reason, rejecting this book has been a part of caste and feminist struggles. To that effect, 25th December is even celebrated as Manusmriti Dahan Divas in some parts of the country as an open revolt against Brahmanism. And through writings and speeches, we know that people like Jyotiba Phule and B.R. Ambedkar, both feminists and emancipators of the oppressed masses, have attacked Manusmriti, considering it to be in the way of equality. But time and again, the political sphere has seen a difference in opinions between right-leaning ideologues and anti-caste or anti-Aryan supremacy leaders when it comes to this book. Like Periyar, for instance, who was a rationalist and whose self-respect movement had led to the criticism and also the burning of Manusmriti. On the other hand, RSS, which is the parent body of BJP, had famously said that Manusmriti would be a good guiding document for the country shortly after the Constitution of India had come into effect. Even as we say that modern India is guided by the Constitution, which looks at everybody as equal citizens, 70 years after the country adopted its Constitution, why is Manusmriti still a part of the political discourse? Ms. Kavita Krishnan says that despite what the Constitution says, India's secular modernity has failed to face the realities of caste and other inequalities openly.
I think that basically there are two ways in which the Manusmriti has survived in modern India. One is, of course, that it has survived right from the time of the freedom struggle and the Constitution, because the RSS openly embraced it and endorsed it and said that, this should have been the Constitution of a Hindu India, and instead you have the actual Constitution of a secular India, and that is a travesty, and that should not have been there. So that you have the RSS actually writing and propagating all this. So there is an undercurrent in India which has actively been propagating the Manusmriti, right? So, but on the other hand, I think that the other problem is a problem inherent to India's secular modernity, which is that it has refused to face the reality of caste openly. So, the Constitution says there shall be no discrimination on the basis of caste. And it is almost as though, therefore, you're not supposed to acknowledge the existence of discrimination on the basis of caste. So the political, politics in India largely, if you rule out the Dalit movements and the women's movements and the left movements, they have refused to, mainstream politics in India has refused to acknowledge caste, the continuing caste discrimination, right? So they have acknowledged caste only as a representational category, right? So saying, okay, in an election, this caste, that caste, this is it's like as though it is a description category or a diversity category and not a category of hierarchy and oppression, right? So as a result, you have, school textbooks and so on, which do not acknowledge caste at all. They do not tell you that, this is the reality that you have around you, and why do you have that reality? Why is it that untouchability continues? Why is it that there is a notion of caste hierarchy? Where does it come from? And, so Manusmriti has survived, therefore, as an unspoken. You don't have to have read it. You are imbibing it even when you haven't read it.
Now, coming back to the political face-off in Tamil Nadu, prompted by a BJP functionary's online complaint to the cybercrime of the Tamil Nadu police, a case was registered against Mr. Thirumavalavan under 6 sections of the IPC pertaining to outraging religious feelings and provocations with intent to cause riot. However, the case has been condemned by the DMK, the Congress and other parties of the Secular Progressive Alliance as well. And reacting to the criticism about his comment, Mr. Thirumavalavan said, and I'm quoting his statement, quote, "I only quoted Manusmriti. The BJP is spreading fake news to trigger clashes." End quote. He also reiterated that Manusmriti must be banned and that he will take the fight to the court if required. And Dalit poet Kutti Revathi lauded Mr. Thirumavalavan for speaking up against this issue.
எல்லாருமே இந்த மனுஸ்மிருதியை எதிர்க்க வேண்டியது. சூத்திரர்கள், சூத்திர பெண்கள், தலித் பெண்கள், குறிப்பா பார்ப்பன பெண்கள் மீது கடுமையான வன்மத்தை வெறுப்பை காட்டியது இந்த டெக்ஸ்ட். சோ அப்படி பார்க்கும்போது நம்ம எல்லாருமே மனுஸ்மிருதியை இருக்கணும். காலந்தோறும் அதை எதிர்த்து
all people, women, Dalits, oppressed classes have and should fight against the Manusmriti. For years people have opposed this and all sections of the society should do the same. Even Periyar has stood up against this. This text is very backward and needs to be opposed. I'm very glad Thirumavalavan has brought this issue. Usually we protested against an issue, but after a long time in Tamil Nadu, someone has stood up to speak up against a vice in the society. There is oppressed sections of the society. Khushbu should get to read it and she will then understand how discriminatory it is. She might be now commenting only from the saffron party's angle.
சமூக நீதின்றது ரொம்ப ரொம்ப
And speaking of actor-turned-politician Khushbu Sundar, she delivered contradictory statements on the issue. While she said that there's not, quote-unquote, a single word that demeans women in Manusmriti, she also said that the book was irrelevant. And this is a statement that I'm quoting from an NDTV report. Quote, "What was the necessity for Mr. Thirumavalavan to speak or even refer to this book, which was written in the 17th century? Now, when the elections are coming up, it is absolutely irrelevant. Mr. Thirumavalavan should be ashamed of himself. Either he should say that he will go by the book, which was written 3,700 years ago, or he should say that he follows the constitution of this country." End quote. Similarly, BJP Tamil Nadu Unit Chief L. Murugan said that it was a quote-unquote non-issue since India follows a constitution. But then why did challenging the text become such an issue? Have we been able to entirely discard ideas propagated in Manusmriti and similar books? Or are we simply whitewashing it? If not quote the book directly, Ms. Krishnan says that somewhere there are scriptural sanctions in allowing problematic practices or ideas to exist.
Certainly, and I would say that the most influential liberal commentators on Indian tradition have largely managed to whitewash the Manusmriti. So they have, you have texts, you have popular texts which are teaching you about the Manusmriti, as not only the Manusmriti, but the Gita and so on and so forth. without acknowledging how caste really works in those texts and in those stories. Again, I'll say here that I'm not just counting the religious texts which are, telling you how you should live your life and so on, but even, say, stories, even powerful stories like the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, I think the question is why there is so little discussion of how caste is discussed in those books. How did those texts respond to the debates of their time? So my point is that, we should be seeing even the Manusmriti as a historical text, as something that was responding actively to debates in its own time. And likewise for the Arthashastra or the Kama Sutra and so on, what were they reacting to? So, if you look at Wendy Doninger's work, for instance, she discusses it as a historical work in conversation with other works, in contention with other works, and so on, right? So it is not just a descriptor of the world as it was. It is an attempt to shape the world actively in a particular way. Likewise, when we talk about the Manusmriti in modern India, we are not saying that modern India is living its life according to medieval prescription, according to some ancient prescription. No. We are saying that there is an active attempt to shape Indian modernity, and in that attempt, people have quite consciously used the Manusmriti in order to, define what is Hindu-ness and what is Indian-ness. Okay. So if you look at the debates to do with the age of consent or to do with women's education, around Tilak and so on, you realize that they have also those are foundational debates about Indian modernity. And in those times, people used the idea that women should not be allowed to study, that women needed to be controlled, that the caste, that people from the working classes should not be encouraged to study, that it would be bad for them, and so on and so forth. So you see these arguments being made by somebody of the stature of a Bal Gangadhar Tilak, right? Where is he getting those from? He is claiming scriptural sanction for saying those things, right? And naturally, the Manusmriti is one of the key texts. Again, the Manusmriti is not the only text. You find a lot of that even in the Bhagavad Gita. But the point is that I think the Manusmriti is something which is the most condensed and detailed text, which really puts it all in one place, It explains to you what was seen as dangerous to this system that they were trying to create. Right. So the fact that intercaste marriages were seen as dangerous, especially when it was a marriage in which a man of a lower caste married a woman of a higher caste, that those marriages were seen as the most dangerous, and those marriages were seen as those deserving death, where the oppressed caste man would be deserving of death. And therefore, then you look around you and you understand why in India the so-called honor crimes they're different from the so-called honor crimes in other societies. Here, caste is an enormous factor. It is not just the fact of a love marriage that is punishable. Right. It is the fact that it is certain marriages that are punishable, certain kinds of love that are prohibited and punishable. And you can't understand those if you don't read the Manusmriti.
Oftentimes, there have been calls to ban the text as it is a symbol of oppression. And Mr. Thiruma Vallavan too has called for a ban on it. Can India as a secular democracy afford to be on the fence about such texts? Ms. Krishnan says that perhaps more than a ban, we need to acknowledge how such a book shapes our reality and why that should change. She says that the ideas of Manusmriti aren't lived through those who've read it. Rather, it exists in everyday practices.
See, I think that in my ideal scenario, which is very, very far from where we are right now, in my ideal scenario, I would not say that, okay, let us ban so-and-so text or whatever. Okay. I would say that, in fact, there is a need to acknowledge how that text shapes our reality and why that needs to change. So instead of just saying, okay, evil text, which we don't really need to acknowledge, and we've kind of done away with it. I don't think we should make that mistake again. We shouldn't pretend. We've told ourselves this lie for too long that the Manusmriti is a dead text. Right. It is not. It is a living text. And so we should be encouraged to read it in context, to understand in context and understand exactly how regressive it is and how it is shaping not only our societies but ourselves. And therefore, I would expect not only not only just like school children and everyday people and all of that, but even conscious movements to interrogate themselves, their own conduct, their own understanding. When I read the Manusmriti, if I read it critically, as when I do a critical reading of it, it shines a light on certain dark places in my own self, which I may not want to admit, which I may not know, may not want to acknowledge that they exist. But the fact is that they have. You remember, you recall as a child how you looked at relationships, how you looked at your relationship with the world, how you looked at people's relationships with each other. How did you think of, did intercaste relationships and the cross, did they cross your consciousness at all? Okay. Did the fact that somebody who works in the house may use a different glass from somebody else who, those of us who live in the house, did that, ever ring a bell? These are uncomfortable things that you are forced to ask yourself, about the world around you. We have to acknowledge that, they're being reproduced and they're being kept in place by structures today, by political and economic and social structures today.
If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.